A confident black woman walks through the grocery store, selecting ingredients for her family dinner. But two patrol officers don't see a military wife. They see someone suspicious. They don't just question her, they humiliate her. They handcuff her in the parking lot, throw her against their cruiser, and mock her protests. What they don't know is that this woman's husband commands more firepower than they could imagine. And when you discover who she called from the back of their patrol car, you'll understand why these officers never wear a badge again. If you believe nobody should face harassment just because of their skin color, click subscribe right now. This story delivers the most satisfying act of justice you'll witness this year. Maple Ridge was the kind of suburban town where nothing remarkable happened. Its wide streets were lined with neat houses, well-maintained lawns, and American flags that fluttered gently in the spring breeze. The Westlake Shopping Center served as the community hub, a place where neighbors exchanged pleasantries between errands and teenagers gathered after school. On this particular Wednesday afternoon, the parking lot bustled with the usual midweek activity. Shoppers pushed carts loaded with groceries, while others hurried in and out of the pharmacy, bank, and coffee shop that anchored the modest retail complex. Among them was Zora Richardson, a striking woman in her mid-30s with close-cropped natural hair and the composed bearing of someone comfortable in her own skin. She moved with purpose, consulting her shopping list as she navigated the crowded produce section of Valley Market. Zora wore simple dark jeans and a fitted olive green t-shirt that complemented her warm brown complexion. A small silver pendant, military dog tags, hung from her neck, occasionally catching the fluorescent light as she reached for bell peppers and checked tomatoes for ripeness. Her wedding ring was her only other adornment, a simple platinum band that spoke to her preference for understated elegance. What distinguished Zora wasn't her appearance but her methodical efficiency. She shopped with the precision of someone who managed her time carefully, a habit formed during her years working as a hospital administrator before relocating to Maple Ridge 6 months ago when her husband received new orders. Outside in the patrol car, officers Wade Larson and Keith Burnett circled the parking lot in what they called their routine sweep. Larson, a 16-year veteran with thinning hair and a perpetual scowl, took pride in what he called his sixth sense for trouble. Burnett, barely 4 years on the force, followed his senior partner's lead in all things, eager to prove himself worthy of Larson's approval. "Check out the woman in produce," Larson muttered, slowing the cruiser as they passed the store's large windows. "Been watching her circle the same aisles twice now. Acting funny." Burnett squinted through the glass. "The black lady? Looks like she's just shopping to me." "That's 'cause you don't know what to look for," Larson replied, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "New face in town, expensive shoes, keeps checking her phone. Could be coordinating a hit with someone outside." The younger officer shifted uncomfortably but said nothing as Larson parked the cruiser in a position that gave them a clear view of the exit. Inside Valley Market, Zora finished selecting ingredients for the welcome home dinner she planned for Elijah. After 6 months of deployment, her husband was finally returning to American soil, and she wanted everything to be perfect. As she paid for her groceries, she checked her phone once more. The military transport was on schedule for tonight. Outside, Larson nudged his partner. "See? Looking at her phone again. Let's just have a little chat when she comes out." Zora pushed her cart through the automatic doors, inhaling the warm spring air. The simple pleasure of planning a special meal for Elijah lifted her spirits. 6 months apart had felt like an eternity. As she loaded bags into her trunk, she felt rather than saw someone approach from behind. Before she could turn, a gruff voice broke her concentration. "Excuse me, ma'am. Mind if we ask what brings you to Maple Ridge today?" Officer Larson positioned himself between Zora and her car door, his thumbs hooked casually in his belt loops inches from his holster. "I live here," Zora replied evenly, recognizing the tension in the air immediately. She'd experienced this before, the thin veneer of politeness barely concealing suspicion. "Really?" Burnett chimed in, circling to her other side. "Haven't seen you around. Got some ID on you?" "May I ask why you need my identification?" "I'm simply loading groceries into my car." Zora kept her voice measured, though her heart began to race. Larson's friendly facade dissolved. "Listen, We've had reports of shoplifting rings targeting this area. Just cooperate, and we'll be out of your hair." "Shoplifting?" Zora glanced pointedly at her paid receipt still in her hand. "I have my receipt right here." "Getting smart with us?" Larson stepped closer, invading her space. "Maybe you've got something else in those bags, or in your car." "I'd like to speak to your supervisor," Zora stated firmly, reaching for her phone. Larson's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. "Wrong move, lady. Hands where we can see them. Now. Take your hands off me," Zora said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I've done nothing wrong." "Resisting a police officer," Larson hissed, twisting her arm behind her back with unnecessary force. "Burnett, check her bag." The younger officer hesitated, then started rifling through her purse while Larson pushed Zora against her car. Around them, shoppers slowed their pace, watching the confrontation unfold with uncomfortable fascination. "Found something," Burnett announced, holding up Zora's wallet. He flipped it open and froze when he saw her military ID alongside her driver's license. Larson." But Larson wasn't listening. He'd already yanked Zora's other arm back and was clicking handcuffs around her wrists. "You people always think you're above the law," he muttered, his breath hot against her ear. "I'm a military spouse with full clearance," Zora stated, wincing as the metal bit into her skin. "My husband is Lieutenant Colonel Elijah Richardson, returning from deployment today. You are making a serious mistake." "Sure he is," Larson laughed, deliberately tightening the cuffs another notch. "And I'm the Secretary of Defense." From nearby, someone had begun filming with their phone. Another bystander approached tentatively. "Officers, I was behind her in line. She paid for everything." "Back off, sir," Burnett warned, stepping between them. "This is police business." Larson smirked at Zora. "Let's continue this conversation downtown." The back seat of the police cruiser smelled of stale sweat and desperation. Zora sat rigidly upright, refusing to let her shoulders slump despite the painful angle of her cuffed hands. Through the window, she could see a small crowd gathered in the parking lot, several people with phones raised, filming the incident. "Your husband can bail you out tomorrow," Larson taunted from the driver's seat, meeting her eyes in the rearview mirror. "If he exists." "I get one phone call," Zora stated calmly. "I'd like to make it now." Something in her tone made Burnett glance back nervously, but Larson just shrugged. "Sure, why not? Not like it'll change anything." He had no idea how wrong he was. Burnett awkwardly held the phone to Zora's ear since her hands were cuffed behind her. The call connected after 2 rings. "Hey, baby," she said, her voice suddenly soft. "I know you just landed, but there's been a situation." She paused. "Yes, I'm fine. 2 officers from Maple Ridge PD have detained me in the grocery store parking lot. No reason given." Another pause. "Officers Larson and Burnett. They're taking me to the station now." The change in Elijah's voice was audible even to Burnett, who pulled the phone back slightly at the volume from the other end. "No, don't do that," Zora continued, a mysterious smile touching her lips. "Just make a call. The Davis Protocol should cover this. Yes, that one." The Maple Ridge Police Station was a squat brick building that hadn't been updated since the early 1990s. Its fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Larson paraded Zora through the main entrance, still handcuffed and now the center of attention for the desk sergeant and 3 officers completing paperwork. "Got a shoplifter with an attitude problem," Larson announced loudly. "Says her husband's some big-shot military guy." The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man named Gaines with 25 years on the force, looked up with bored eyes that suddenly sharpened when they landed on Zora. Something about her composed demeanor gave him pause. "Where's the merchandise she supposedly stole?" he asked, noticing their empty hands. Larson faltered. "Well, we're still investigating that part," but she resisted questioning and made threatening movements. "I did no such thing," Zora stated clearly, "and I would appreciate these handcuffs being removed. They're unnecessarily tight and causing circulation issues." Gaines studied her for a moment. "Larson, why don't you uncuff the lady while we sort this out?" "She's still being processed," Larson protested. Before Gaines could respond, the station door swung open. The entire room fell silent as a tall man in army dress blues entered, oak leaf insignia gleaming on his shoulders. Major Vivian Chen scanned the room with laser focus before her eyes locked on Zora. "Mrs. Richardson," she said crisply. "Are you all right?" "I've been better, Major," Zora replied. Major Chen turned to the desk sergeant. "I'm here representing Fort Marshal's JAG office. Mrs. Richardson is to be released immediately." Larson stepped forward. "Now, wait just a minute. Officer," Chen cut him off. "Lieutenant Colonel Elijah Richardson is currently en route with General Holloway. I suggest you release his wife before they arrive." The atmosphere in the room changed instantly. Every officer recognized the gravity of having a general personally involved. "General Holloway?" Gaines repeated, already reaching for the keys. "As in commander of Fort Marshal General Holloway?" "The same," Chen confirmed as Gaines hurriedly unlocked Zora's cuffs. "Mrs. Richardson's husband is one of our most decorated officers, just returning from a classified deployment. The general was welcoming him home when he received Mrs. Richardson's call." Burnett, who had been quiet until now, paled visibly. "We didn't know." "That's precisely the problem," Chen interrupted. "You acted without knowledge, without cause, and according to multiple witness statements now circulating on social media, with obvious racial bias." The front door swung open again. This time, 2 military police officers entered, followed by a distinguished black man in his 50s, wearing the stars of a brigadier general. Beside him strode Lieutenant Colonel Elijah Richardson, his face a mask of controlled fury as he immediately moved to his wife's side. "Zora," he said softly, taking her hands and examining the angry red marks on her wrists. "I'm okay," she assured him, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears of relief. General Holloway didn't wait for introductions. "Who's in charge here?" A door opened, and Captain Willis, the station commander, hurried out. "I am, sir. Captain Robert Willis." "Captain, I want to be very clear," Holloway stated, his voice carrying throughout the now silent station. "What happened today represents a catastrophic failure of training, judgment, and basic human decency by members of your department." Willis swallowed hard. "Sir, I assure you we'll conduct a full investigation." "That's no longer your purview alone," Holloway interrupted. "Given that this involves a military family with security clearance, the incident has triggered federal oversight protocols. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division has been notified, and agents are en route." Larson, finally grasping the magnitude of his mistake, stepped forward. "Sir, if I could explain." "Officer Larson," Elijah spoke for the first time, his voice deadly quiet. "My wife spent 3 years coordinating security protocols between military and civilian hospitals in conflict zones. She has higher clearance than anyone in this building except possibly the general. And today, you handcuffed her for buying groceries while black." The simple truth of it hung in the air. No one spoke. "The Davis Protocol," Zora explained, seeing Burnett's confused expression, "is an emergency response system for military personnel or dependents experiencing civil rights violations. Elijah helped design it 3 years ago after a similar incident with another officer's family." Larson looked from face to face, searching for sympathy and finding none. For the first time, genuine fear flickered in his eyes. By nightfall, the video had gone viral. Multiple angles captured by bystanders showed Zora's dignified composure contrasted against Larson's aggressive posture. The footage clearly contradicted the official report Larson had filed, where he claimed she had been confrontational and possibly intoxicated. In the station's conference room, Zora sat beside Elijah as she gave her statement to Agent Patricia Morales from the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division. Captain Willis and the department's legal counsel sat across from them, expressions grim as the recording device captured every word. "After Officer Larson handcuffed me," Zora continued, "he said, and I quote, 'You people always think you're above the law.'" "And there were witnesses to this statement?" Agent Morales asked. "At least 3 bystanders within earshot," Zora confirmed. "One was the man who verified I had paid for my groceries." Captain Willis winced. Each new detail dug the department deeper into a public relations nightmare. The hashtag Justice for Zora was already trending nationwide. "Mrs. Richardson," Willis ventured, "I want to personally apologize for—" "With all due respect, Captain," Elijah interrupted, "apologies without action are meaningless. This isn't about making my wife feel better. It's about ensuring no one else experiences what she did." The door opened, and Major Chen entered with a tablet. "You'll want to see this," she said, placing it before Agent Morales. "Body cam footage from Officer Burnett. It was just discovered after initially being reported as corrupted." They watched in silence as the video showed Larson approaching the cruiser where Zora sat handcuffed. "Got her secure," Burnett's voice came from off-camera. Larson grinned into the camera, unaware it was recording. "Good. Let her sit there a while. These entitlement types need to learn their place. Bet she's never seen the inside of a cell before." "What if she really is married to military?" Burnett asked nervously. Larson laughed. "Please, they all lie. Probably got that ID from some boyfriend. Trust me, I've been doing this long enough to know her type. Just watch. She'll be crying for her lawyer in an hour." Agent Morales paused the video, her expression hardening. "Captain Willis, I've seen enough. Officers Larson and Burnett are to be placed on immediate administrative leave pending full investigation. I'll be recommending federal civil rights charges against Officer Larson." Willis nodded, defeated. "I understand. Additionally," Morales continued, "the Justice Department will be opening a pattern or practice investigation into your entire department, effective immediately." The captain's face went ashen. Such investigations often led to years of federal oversight and mandated reforms. "This isn't personal," Elijah said quietly. "It's necessary." 3 days later, Maple Ridge found itself under an unwelcome national spotlight. News vans lined the street outside City Hall, where Mayor Gloria Winters prepared to address the gathered press. Behind closed doors, an emergency session of the City Council had stretched past midnight, with heated debates about how to handle the crisis. In the Richardson home, Zora and Elijah sat with their laptops, monitoring the news coverage. What had begun as a personal ordeal had evolved into something much larger. "They're trying to paint Larson as one bad apple," Zora observed, scrolling through a local news site. "But the department's own data shows this pattern going back years." Elijah nodded grimly. "Chen sent over the preliminary findings. Larson has had 7 complaints of excessive force against minorities in 5 years, all dismissed without investigation." "And Burnett?" "Newer to the force, but already following the same path. 2 complaints in 4 months." Their doorbell rang. Elijah checked the security camera before opening the door to Major Chen and a woman they didn't recognize. "Mrs. Richardson," Chen said, "this is Vanessa Talbot from the ACLU. She's been working with families affected by similar incidents in neighboring counties." Talbot, a focused woman with silver-streaked hair, shook their hands. "What happened to you fits a disturbing regional pattern. We've documented 23 cases of racial profiling by police in this Tri-County area just in the past year." Over coffee, Talbot explained how Zora's case could become a catalyst for systematic change. "The federal investigation gives us leverage we didn't have before. We can push for meaningful reforms, not just sensitivity training, but actual accountability structures." Zora considered this. "I never wanted to become an activist. I just wanted to pick up groceries without being humiliated." "That's exactly why your voice matters," Talbot replied. "You're not an activist. You're a citizen who deserves basic dignity." Outside, they could hear chants from a small demonstration that had formed in the support of the police department. Back the blue signs waved alongside American flags. "There's resistance," Chen acknowledged, glancing out the window. "Some people see accountability as an attack on law enforcement rather than a strengthening of it." "Elijah trained soldiers to follow rules of engagement in active war zones," Zora said. "If they can maintain discipline under fire, officers can do the same in a grocery store parking lot." The mayor's press conference began on their laptop screen. They watched as she announced Officer Larson's termination and Officer Burnett's suspension pending further training. More significantly, she revealed that the city had agreed to a consent decree with the Justice Department mandating comprehensive reforms of the police department's policies, training, and accountability measures. "It's a start," Elijah said quietly, "but the real work happens after the cameras leave." Zora squeezed his hand. "Then we'd better get started." A week later, Zora pushed her shopping cart through Valley Market again, determined to reclaim her normal routine. She felt eyes on her, some supportive, others resentful, but held her head high as she selected the same ingredients for the welcome dinner she never got to make. As she rounded the cereal aisle, she came face to face with Keith Burnett. Out of uniform and visibly uncomfortable, he froze when he saw her. "Mrs. Richardson," he managed after an awkward pause. Zora regarded him steadily. "Officer Burnett." "Former officer," he corrected quietly. "I resigned yesterday." This surprised her. "I thought you were on suspension." "I was." He shifted his weight, struggling to maintain eye contact. "But after everything, I couldn't go back. Not to that department. Not with what I know now." Zora studied him, the slumped shoulders, the haunted eyes of someone confronting hard truths about himself. "Walk with me," she finally said. As they moved through the store, Burnett spoke haltingly about his 4 years on the force, how he'd been paired with Larson as a rookie, how casual racism had been normalized through jokes and statistical profiling, how speaking up marked you as not being a team player. "I knew it was wrong," he admitted, staring at the floor, "but I told myself I was just following protocol, that Larson knew better because he had more experience." "You chose comfort over conscience," Zora observed without malice. "Yes," he acknowledged, "and I'll live with that shame for the rest of my life." They reached the checkout line. "What will you do now?" she asked. "I don't know. Maybe go back to school? I was studying social work before." He trailed off, then straightened his spine. "Mrs. Richardson, I know words are cheap, but I am truly sorry. Not just for what happened to you, but for everyone I failed by staying silent." Something in his sincerity touched her. "Keith," she said, using his first name deliberately, "growth starts with accountability. What matters now is what you do with these realizations." As they parted outside, Burnett hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Larson wasn't acting alone that day. There's a group of officers, they call themselves the Old Guard, who target specific neighborhoods and demographics. They communicate on private channels. I have documentation." Zora felt a chill. "Have you shared this with investigators?" "I will," he promised. "Tomorrow morning. I wanted you to know first, because without you standing your ground that day, I might never have found the courage to do the right thing." The conference room at Fort Marshall hummed with focused energy as Zora reviewed the presentation one final time. 6 months had passed since that day in the parking lot. 6 months of testimony, evidence gathering, and tireless advocacy. "Ready?" Elijah asked, straightening his uniform before the doors opened to admit the attendees. Zora nodded, watching as the room filled with an unprecedented gathering, police chiefs from 7 counties, Justice Department officials, civil rights attorneys, community organizers, and military leadership. General Holloway opened the session. "Today marks the official launch of the Regional Law Enforcement Accountability Partnership. This program represents a fundamental reimagining of how military installations can work with local police departments to ensure constitutional policing in our communities." He nodded to Zora, yielding the floor. She rose, conscious of how far beyond her comfort zone this moment stretched. Yet her voice was clear and confident as she addressed the room. "What began as a personal humiliation has revealed systemic failures that endanger us all," she began. "The investigation, triggered by my detention, uncovered a network of officers across 3 counties who routinely violated civil rights, falsified reports, and targeted minorities." Slides appeared on the screen showing the extent of the Old Guard network exposed by Burnett's whistleblowing. 26 officers implicated, 14 criminally charged, 3 departments under federal consent decrees. "But identifying problems without creating solutions helps no one," Zora continued. That's why today we're unveiling a comprehensive program that combines military precision with community oversight. The initiative she outlined was revolutionary: a civilian review board with actual disciplinary authority, body cameras with tamper-proof technology developed by military contractors, psychological screening protocols adapted from Special Forces vetting, and most significantly, a cross-jurisdictional database that tracked officer complaints regardless of department transfers. Former Officer Burnett, now enrolled in a master's program in criminal justice reform, presented next, detailing how subtle cultural factors enabled misconduct to flourish. The most dangerous words in any department are, "That's how we've always done it," he explained. "We need to create environments where ethical officers can speak up without fear of retaliation." When the formal presentations concluded, Zora found herself approached by Chief Miranda Oakes from neighboring Lakeside Township. "Mrs. Richardson," she said, "your work here is uncomfortable for many of us, but necessary." She hesitated. "I've been in policing for 22 years. I've seen reforms come and go. What makes you think this time will be different?" Zora smiled. "Because this time, we're not just changing policies. We're changing power structures. And," she added, "because people like you are asking that question instead of resisting the conversation." As the meeting adjourned, General Holloway pulled the Richardsons aside. "Washington called this morning. They want to scale this model nationally. They're creating a task force, and they want you both involved." Elijah looked at Zora, who nodded. "We're in," he said. "All the way." 1 year to the day after her arrest, Zora Richardson stood at a podium in Washington, D.C., cameras flashing as she prepared to address the press. Beside her, Elijah stood tall in his dress uniform, recently promoted to colonel for his work on the National Police Reform Initiative that had grown from their ordeal. Behind them, a diverse coalition of supporters gathered: civil rights attorneys, reformed police departments, military families, and ordinary citizens who had found their voices through the movement. "Today," Zora began, "President Harrison signs the Law Enforcement Accountability and Standards Act, the most comprehensive police reform legislation in a generation. This law enshrines the principles we've been fighting for: transparency, accountability, and equal justice under law." She paused, remembering the humiliation of handcuffs cutting into her wrists, the helplessness of being forced into a police car for no reason other than existing in her skin. This journey began with an injustice, but it doesn't end with vengeance. It ends with transformation. In the audience, Keith Burnett sat watching, now working with a police reform advocacy group. Beside him was Officer Gaines, the desk sergeant who had removed Zora's handcuffs that first day, now a departmental trainer in de-escalation techniques. "The measure of our success won't be in policies or programs," Zora continued. "It will be in the ordinary moments that never make headlines, when a black mother shops for groceries without fear, when an officer approaches a citizen with respect rather than suspicion, when we all recognize our shared humanity." She smiled at Elijah, then faced the cameras with resolve. "That work continues tomorrow, and we'll be there every step of the way."